Good morning, children. Today, class for 8th. Children, we are discussing about the second chapter, friction. Okay. In previous, we discussed about the importance of friction in our life. What happens if the friction is completely disappear from the earth? Okay. And today we are discussing about that whether the friction is responsible for the heat production. Okay, children. Today we are discussing about that the friction is responsible for the heat production. Children, rub your hands with gentle force. At the time, what do you observe? At the time we observe that one, we feel warm. Yes or not? Yes. When we rub our hands each other, at that time the heat energy is produced by our hands due to that frictional force that acts in between our two hand surfaces. So when we rub our hands together at the time in between our two hands, due to the frictional force, the heat energy is generated. Same, we observe this process while we rub the mastic against the surface of matchbox. Okay, when we rub the mastic against the surface of the matchbox, at the time in between the mastic and the surface of the matchbox, due to the existence of frictional force, the heat energy is generated, and finally the mastic is lighted and gives brighter flame. So, from these activities, we can say that one the frictional force also responsible for the generation of heat energy. Generation of heat energy. Children, you might also observe that one, while the rocket is moving in the space, it expels fire and gases from bottom side. Yes or not? So why it expels more fire means nothing but due to the frictional force that is generated in the air. Normally the rocket is coated with metal substances that reduces the frictional force. Okay. Next, children, we wear different types of footwear such as slippers, chappals, formal shoes, sports shoes, etc. And when we observe the bottom of the footwear, we observe some grooves, means some pattern designs, means nothing but in some areas we observe that one flat are there, some area we observe that one gaps, again particular designs are there, so that are called as nothing but grooves. So when compared to the normal footwear, we observe more grooves in sports shoe. So why we observe some grooves at the bottom of the footwear. Why? Because nothing but if the grooves are not present at the bottom of the footwear while walking or running, we can easily slip and be severely injured. To prevent that one means nothing but the grooves that are present at the bottom of the footwear gives us better grip to easily walk on the surface of the floor. Means nothing but because of the presence of grooves increases friction force between the earth surface and our legs. So when the frictional force is increasing, we can easily standing and we can easily walking. Okay, so that's why we observe grooves on the footwear and more grooves in sports shoes. Why? Because nothing but the athletes and sportsmen while playing, they fastly running. Yes or not? If the grooves are not there, there may be chance of slipping. Jari padipoye pramadam undi. So to prevent that, normally the sports shoes have more grooves. Okay. Next, children, you might have observed that one upon the surface of the vehicle tires you observe threads, means at particular patterns you observe. The tires are not smooth. We observe small design gaps also there. Yes or not? As we use the vehicle more, means nothing but when the vehicle covers more distance, slowly the tires become smooth. Means the threading of that tires will be gone. Means nothing but threading అనేది వెళ్ళిపోతుంది. If the threading is less upon the vehicle tires, the tires become very smooth. At the time when the tires are moving on the surface of the road, at the time they will easily slide and it leads to the accidents. So whenever the threading of the vehicle's tires are worn out, immediately we have to change the tires of the vehicles. Okay, so the threading of the tire also increases friction in between that vehicle tire and road surface. So at the time the tire will easily pass on the road surface. Okay. Next, children, in this situation we observe that one we have to increase the frictional force. Okay, the friction have many more uses in our daily life. In the same way, we have some disadvantages of friction in our daily life, especially in industries. The frictional force causes very damage. Okay, we are discussing about that one, how the frictional force causing damage to that one equipment or machineries. Listen, children, normally we are playing carom board. When we continuously playing on the carom board, at the time the surface of the carom board become rough, garkuga maartundi. At the time the coins not easily slide upon the surface of the carom board. At the time, what do you observe? The carom coins are not easily slide on the surface of the carom board. At that time we sprinkle some powder upon the surface of the carom board. When we sprinkle some powder upon the carom board at the time, again the surface of the carom board becomes smooth, and the carom coins will easily slide upon the surface of the carom board. So normally the powder that we used on the surface of the carom board reduces the friction. Yes or not? Okay, the powder that we used on the surface of the carom board is reduces the friction. And children, normally we are applying grease material or oil material to the shutters and doors when they are properly not working. Yes or not? Why? Because nothing but if the more frictional force is there in shutters and doors, at the time the tightness is increasing in shutters and doors. At the time to open and to close the shutters and doors is a difficult process. Means nothing but we can't easily move the shutters and door. At the time we apply oil material to the shutters or grease materials. So when you apply the grease material to the shutters, at the time the frictional force is decreasing, and the shutters can easily slide. So the material that reduces the frictional force, the materials that reduces the frictional force are called as lubricants. What? Lubricants. The materials that reduces the frictional force are called as lubricants. Example for lubricants are grease material, oil material, etc. Grease material, oil material, etc. Not only children, one, try to push the heavy suitcase. At the time it is easy for you? No. Why? Because nothing but the weight of that suitcase is very more. So you want to move or you want to displace the suitcase from one place to the another place, you have to apply more force on it. Means nothing but more frictional force is acting upon the suitcase. To overcome that frictional force, we have to apply more applied force. Suppose if you fix small tires or rollers to the suitcase, at the time try to pull that suitcase. At the time what do you observe? By the application of minimal force, okay, by the application of minimum force we can easily pull the suitcase. Why? Because nothing but we arrange or we fix the rollers or tires to the suitcase. Means nothing but the rollers also somewhat reduce the friction. Okay, so when the one object rolls on the surface of the another object, when the one object rolls on the surface of the another object, the resultant force is called as a rolling friction. What? Rolling friction. So when you fix the rollers or small tires to suitcase, at the time we can easily pull the heavy suitcase also. Next, children, you hear the word ball bearings, means bearings. In fans, normally we use the ball bearings. So, what is the use of that ball bearings? So, in the electric equipments, the ball bearings reduces the friction, and the electric equipment like fans easily move. If the ball bearings in the fan are damaged, at the time the fans cannot easily move, and the type of fan gives low speed air, and it is also gives loud sound also. So that's why whenever the ball bearings are damaged, we have to replace the ball bearings that in that electric equipment. So in the ball bearing we observe that one plate is there. Upon that one small ball like structures are there, means in Telugu charras. Upon that one another plate is there. So the upper plate is moving upon that ball bearings. So at the time the ball bearings which are present in between the two plates prevents the direct contact of the two plates. If the two plates are in direct contact, at the time they brush past over each other, రెండు ఒక దానికి ఒకటి తాగుతాయి. At that time more friction is generated. Sometimes it leads to the fire accidents also. Okay, that's why we use that ball bearings. Normally we think that when the frictional force only exists upon the solid floor, not the frictional force also exerts in the fluid materials also, means nothing but in gases and liquids also we observe that frictional force. Okay, generally the gases and liquids are referred as fluids. Why the gases and liquids are referred as fluid means nothing but the substances that can easily move are the substances that can easily flow from one place to the another place are called as fluids. Means that the gases can also flow from one place to the another place. Liquid, when you pour the water in one place, immediately they flow towards the direction of gravity. So that's why the liquids and gases are referred as fluids. So the frictional force that is exerted by the liquids, the frictional force that is exerted by the fluids is called as drag. What? Drag. Okay, the frictional force that is exerted in the fluids is called as drag. So normally when you place our hand in the water, you observe that one somewhat force is pulling us. So that is nothing but drag. The frictional force that exert in the fluids is called as drag. Not only that one, children, the shape of the aeroplane is streamlined, means nothing but very sharp. Why? Because nothing but in the air also frictional force is there, means drag. To overcome the drag, they are streamlined, means nothing but streamlined means nothing but in Telugu means కొచ్చగా ఉండడు, sharp end we observe that one. So in the birds also same, by following same principle they can easily move in the air. Okay, the fishes all the, when you observe the body of the fishes, same shape is streamlined shaped. Okay, so this is the importance of friction in our daily life. Okay, friction, we have lot of uses by the friction. At the same time some difficulties also faced by the frictional force, especially in the industries. Okay, so this is about the lesson friction. It is very important lesson, children. Okay, try to read this lesson carefully. Why? Because nothing but is easy lesson, and every time more questions will be asking from this area only. Okay, children, thank you.